Welcome to this video on how to run green lever workshops, sourcing workshops. So this is a video, kind of the director's cut. We do also have a shorter videos on what are actually these green levers, just summarizing them, right? The ideas of how in purchasing to save money while benefiting the environment. These are the levers are a collection of tips and tricks for how to do this if you are a purchaser. Now, this video is dedicated at you who want to run such a workshop. So we explain a little bit how this works, give some background, also some insights on how the green levers came about, and then we'll explain the levers so that you can really use them for your own. I'm Holger Schiele, Professor of Technology Management and Supply at the University of Twente. And together with the colleagues of this project Precious, financed by Erasmus+, the EU program, together with colleagues from Tampere, University of Tampere, University of Kaunas Technology, or University of Technology to be correct, University of Aveiro, and we from the University of Twente, plus some partners in Brazil, the CIEC. We have developed this green lever approach in the project and tested it, and that's what we're going to show you in a moment. The lever approach is already quite old. I've run plenty of such workshops also when we're still working as a consultant before coming to the university. And that is why now a short introduction in general nature how these workshops can be set up. So these are the tips and tricks on that. Then the green levers, how they have been developed, and the levers in detail. Now, generally, what is a lever and what does it do? It addresses the most fundamental thing in purchasing: how to achieve savings. Now that is something which will eternally be there, I presume. The question is how. And that is where the lever analysis comes into play. Levers are devices with small effort to achieve relatively a lot. That's what you see on the picture here. You can lift large bars and without too much of an effort. Now, the definition of a lever is sourcing tactics employed to achieve cost savings with suppliers, both through innovations as through purely commercial approaches. Just to give it a little bit of a context on that, we take the annual planning of at least a large company. It may have a target turnover plus a target profit, out of which you can calculate how much the production can cost. On the other hand, you compare this to the last year's situation, last year's turnover, last year's cost, assuming that you could achieve the same this year again. Obviously, you have to take into consideration inflation, etc., etc. And often, unfortunately, that would not match with the target. So you have to generate some savings. This is the yellow box here. Now, these are the purchasing savings, which every purchaser knows too well. And the lever analysis now argues that to fulfill these targets, this box here, you have to create a lot of projects, of saving projects with your suppliers within your commodity, one by one. And if you have filled this up with projects which you plan, you have to put on this project planning and project execution, and then you will achieve the target throughout the year. Start of all of this is that you open a black box and don't leave it to lucky chance how to achieve the savings, but write them down, plan them, and that is what exactly the levers do. They end up in projects, on saving projects. Just embedding this, a particularity which we do have in purchasing is that we are actually having several levels of strategy, right? The purchasing strategy obviously differs if we are in a high-tech company or in a cost-oriented company, whatever. Then the category strategies, buying leather may be completely different than, for example, office supplies here, right? I mean, leather, very difficult commodity. This is a byproduct. Hardly anybody breeds cattle just for selling the leather. It's for the meat. And then as a buyer for leather, you obviously have to find another way of getting to become an attractive customer there. Now, anyway, what turned out is that the tactics which you employ there in different variants, you can summarize the underlying mechanisms how you achieve the savings in seven different levers, or levers if you prefer the American pronunciation. Now we are here in an EU-sponsored project, so we use the British variant, the levers. Now, there are several of them: grouping of demand, evaluation of price, etc. We're going to look at them in a moment. Point is that designing your category strategy for the next year, typically, you will check which levers are more successful and derive concrete projects, activities out of this. That is at the end of this exercise. And then the projects have to be executed, and then the savings come and the targets are achieved. That's the idea. Now, what are these famous levers and how can we systematically understand them? Two general types. We call the first type the cost levers. They are also called commercial levers. Right here you try to use an advantage. It's typically driven by purchasing. Classical example, cost, price lever, right? If you have enough market power, then you can use this and drive down prices. That is a cost commercial lever. And then we have the other class of levers, which are the innovation levers, in which you try to create a benefit together with the supplier, for example, by improving the product which he's delivering. For that, normally you will need to have a larger team, cross-functional collaboration. That's why these levers are also often called cross-functional levers. Generally speaking, we can distinguish between the grouping of volume, the pooling lever, right? This is the underlying logic, larger volumes, economies of scales. Another lever is the price evaluation, driving down the costs by creating competition with the suppliers, comparing them. The third one of the commercial levers is the extension of supply base, essentially finding new suppliers, better ones, or developing them. Then we have the innovation levers, starting classically with a product optimization, changing the product. And that is, by the way, where also the green levers come very prominently into play. If you improve the product, you take out, let's say, a gram of metal. Well, this is what you don't have to pay for. And second, it stays in its virgin state in the ground and you don't have to extract it. So it's also environmentally beneficial. That's the idea. But then you go also further to process optimization and the optimizing of the relationship, right? That is another idea. And finally, last category of levers are the cross-commodity levers. That is included because at the end of optimizing your sourcing category, which is your responsibility, you may want to see on the negative side, if you don't harm any other commodities, like buying cheap paper and then needing more toner, so that is for the company not very beneficial. The other way around, you can also look at benefits with other commodities. That is the last one, the cross-commodity lever. So this is generally speaking how you can organize them. Of course, they have a lot of sub-levers, which we're going to discuss, but generally that's a way how you can understand and summarize them and systematically identify them. Does lever analysis work? Yes, it does. Here we have the results of 142 lever workshops, which we have collected and conducted many of them. And you see all of them have found project ideas during these cases. And that might also be quite interesting. All of them generated savings, something between 2 and 6%. You may now argue, well, 2% is not a lot, but please notice that we recommend, and that's how it has been calculated here, that savings is calculated as a part of the total commodity volume. not just of one little project. Why is this so? Yeah, this comes from the logic which we have described before, that you derive your savings targets from the total planning of your company, your purchasing volumes, etc. And therefore it has to add up in the end again. And for that reason, the recommendation is to measure savings as a part of the total commodity volume. And practically, this also helps to prioritize your activities. Now, hoping that you see the benefits of this method, one last remark. You can apply it obviously also for your own. Two ways of application, right? A purchaser can simply use this for his own making up the mind and identifying ideas and starting there. The other variant, which we are going to discuss in the future, is running a workshop. In that case, you invite the cross-functional partners, everybody who is involved with your commodity, and systematically discuss one by one these levers and collect the ideas. So this is the whole idea. Systematically, not by lucky chance. It's no brainstorming. This is a systematic approach to not forget anything. Now, what can be done in such a workshop? How does this typically look like? First of all, obviously, before inviting, you prepare the data here, your volumes, your suppliers, etc., etc. Hopefully, you are so lucky to have a good IT backbone to provide you with this on an updated variant. Otherwise, you have to dive into SAP, etc. You know this. But that is important to have really a starting base and know what you're talking about and what are also the targets. Then you invite the partners and discuss lever by lever. Whom to invite? Typically, in an industrial firm, the purchasing department organizes the workshop and invites quality people, those from logistics, production, and technology / engineering, the R&D people, right? They are all in contact with the material you're buying, with the suppliers providing it. Of course, this depends on the commodity. If it is about advertisement services, then you may obviously want to invite the marketing people who are the users of that, right? So, but generally, a cross-functional setting is recommended. And then after having discussed all of the levers, we recommend to write down concrete project ideas. And of course then execute them, meaning during the workshop you have some rough ideas. Afterwards you will have to refine them and then make the decision which one to enact. Luckily, in the meantime, there's also some software available which helps you with that. We could identify 3 software suites as for now, plus some of the which are really dedicated at sourcing software, including Lever Logic. Plus some of the larger suites do also in the meantime include a layer for Lever. Charm of this whole system is that it can be directly connected then to kind of a project management, and the savings can be tracked throughout the year and then really happen. Good idea to use this. Of course, you can also work with Excel. That is your choice. A little agenda, how such a Lever workshop could look like. Starting at 9 o'clock in the morning, depending on how long the people have to travel to come, right? Then the second bullet point I would like to highlight. Of course, you have some time to discuss of the status of the commodity, and also leave a little bit time here for people to talk. If there is someone who has an urgent agenda point which he wants to bring forward, that is the point. At the same time, so don't jump directly into the technicals of the levers. At the same time, careful, this is not a brainstorming session, otherwise you will not learn too much. Therefore, you have to stop this at a certain moment in time, the general discussion, and really go into the discussion of the levers. But even if it's only 15 minutes, our recommendation is to run such a small space for open ideas. Then what you do, round number 1, discussion of the options one by one for lever. So you display the first lever and its sub ideas, the sub levers, which we're going to see in later on, and collect suggestions of what could be done in this for this commodity with applying this lever. Once there are no more ideas, only then you go to the second one, right? And so on, it goes on. And then we recommend to make a second round. Do not, in which you try to assess the potential of the idea into low, medium, and high. Low, something between less than 0.3 or 0.5% savings, medium, somewhere to 2-3%, and high above that. Why these two rounds? Because if you start discussing the savings potential immediately in the first idea, that might take too long and you do not get all the ideas. So better make this in two rounds. And even if you have many ideas, skip that part because you can always assess it later again. Right? That is how we would recommend running a lever workshop. Display an Excel sheet, very simple, in which you write down the ideas and only open the discussion on the potential of savings in the second round. Now, and of course, in the end, produce your project templates and execute these ideas. If you want to know more, further reading is possible. For example, this paper, Estimating Cost-Saving Potential from International Sourcing and Other Sourcing Levers, that is the one which dissected the 140 levers and how they were working, or the lever workshops. Then the sourcing tactics to achieve cost savings, developing a formative method of measurement. Developing measurement sounds a little bit abstract, but there where you find the classical levers if you really want to apply them. And another one written by Frank Hesping, who wrote his PhDs on this lever analysis, is matching them with the Kraljic matrix. So that is a very interesting output here. In fact, what he did for almost a year matched all the activities of his colleagues at the company, which levers have they applied, and looked at which quadrant of the matrix, of the Kraljic matrix, this commodity was positioned. Main interesting finding, and with this a little bit deviating from what normally has been recommended by the Kraljic thing, also in the strategic quadrant, you can apply cost levers. That works, so you don't limit your perspective too much beforehand. That is the recommendation out of this. And the recommendation of the first one is, unfortunately, there are also a few trade-offs between these levers. For example, the global sourcing lever did not go very well with the product improvement lever, so you have to make a choice on which one to implement first. Now, here to go further into detail. Now, coming to the green levers. This is a variant. Everything what we have been discussing so far fits into applying green levers. But now the new thing which we have developed here are levers which not only save cost, but also benefit the environment, or the other way around, how you want to put it. But both are always together. Can this go together? Yes. And here is a little bit of an argument which you can use if you have some skeptics in your company. Look at what happened on a macro level and the European Union. You see here the blue line, which is the growth of the GDP in the last decade. This has gone up. And the dark line is the emissions. They have gone down, meaning that on average we have been able to produce more and pollute less. People argue that this is not enough. So here the question is, of course, for us now as purchasing, how can we contribute from purchasing to accelerate this direction even more? But essentially it shows that it is not a contradiction. You can be more sustainable while growing, while also being more profitable. And that's what we try to do here. And we have, I believe, some systematical ideas on how to do so. Yeah, that was the project Precious Erasmus Plus project, which had exactly, among others, the target to identify these levers. We try to illustrate it with this seesaw, right, where the green part really lifts you up and helps you to achieve a lot of savings. Nice, isn't it? Now, what did we do? First of all, a lot of workshops in Portugal with environmental engineers. We always ask there, okay, try to look at projects which you have done, which generated both of these benefits, right? So the idea here was simply to collect past experience and prompting the people a bit into the direction of what they had been doing. The Netherlands, we did workshop with purchasers, world cafes, right? At Finland with public procurement. In Lithuania, we had an interesting sample also with some SMEs, that's typically sales representatives, right, also included. And finally, in Brazil, we had a community of practice. That means every month we have been meeting there with a couple of companies, a dozen, which were interested in this subject and discussed all these elements. And in particular, there also many cases have been collected and also the tests which we have been running, the test workshop took place there. So altogether, more than 115 people put all their ideas, experiences together. Out of this came a long list of potential levers, which we sorted according to the 7 lever model which we had introduced before. And then as a final point, we made also a survey in which we tried to bring this to a larger base, asking more than 200 professionals in the end, how have they been applying, what is their experience, which of these elements, if they have applied them, have been more successful. So in the following slides, you will see those which are marked in dark. They have been had more success with a larger sample here of purchasers which we have surveyed. This does not mean that the other levers do not work as well. This obviously always depends a little bit on the situation, right? In which you are, but as a general indication, you can make this little distinction here. And if you have little time, take those which are marked in dark. They have been proven very successful with many people around. So that is how the green levers have been designed here and how they are. Now, looking at the green levers in detail, how are they actually designed? What are they? Again, recall, this is applied to this 7 lever model, volume bounding, price evaluation, expanding the supply base, etc. And just think, how can we give this a green touch? Starting with the volume bundling. There are very obvious thing, and that's why it is dark, because it's really working quite well with many companies, is just grouping on ecological suppliers. Meaning, when you do a pooling exercise, just eliminate as a first instance those suppliers of which you obviously have to have assessed from a sustainability perspective, which are less sustainable. Concentrate the volume on the remaining suppliers which are more sustainable. And by this, the classical pooling mechanism works. Volume amounts, right? There are lower handling costs, more economies of scale. While, because you eliminated those which are less sustainable, you have a more sustainable supply base with this. So combining the sustainability with cost savings. Another interesting lever is looking at this complementary product services, right, which your commodity may have. Maybe it's also possible for your supplier to have a bit of packaging for that, which is at the same time saving money. So that is the ideas which the complementary things here. Outsourcing to greener suppliers, always possible. And variant reduction, also an interesting thing here. We have a tendency of creating too many variants and different order numbers for more or less the same product. Here it's an exercise really to look at these variants and then again apply this filter of the sustainability and then try to see if some of them cannot be merged or eliminated, and again with a sustainability target. And this is a way how pooling works in a green lever environment. Now, once you have discussed all of them, you go to the next one, price evaluation. So how can we apply this here? You may wonder. Now, first of all, of course, total cost calculation. That is a strong thing here, depending on a longer time perspective. This obviously has to be following also your business model. A classical thing is the green auction. You make an e-auction like you did before, except that again, the green suppliers are those which are qualifying for that, or at least they get a bonus or malus in that. In this way, you will also benefit from the auctioning and competition advantage and achieving your additional environmental benefits. Calculation of target emissions, another one. Expanding of supply base. Well, that is the idea of working with supply bases here, replacing functional similar suppliers with those which are more sustainable. On the one hand, this may reduce the amount of suppliers. On the other hand, it can be also our way to systematically look for new suppliers based on the environmental criteria. For example, looking for suppliers who can solve a particular issue, but using a material which, for example, does not include hydrocarbons. That is the way how to think here. Import substitution is a classical idea which is obviously environmental friendly, right? Because you don't have to transport the material for so far. So that is an idea here. Product optimization. Already mentioned that this is a very strong lever in concerning the environmental thing. Energy savings. Can the supplier produce anything in a way that you, or for example, in your production, use less energy? I mean, clearly, every kilowatt hour not needed, you don't have to pay for it, and its production does not contaminate or pollute the environment. Contamination, we will not hope, that will be really serious. What also work quite well are sustainable supply chain initiatives. So this is indeed a systematic way of working together with your supplier on trying to find product improvements. And here we also recommend the running of green lever workshop with supplier. Typically, these workshops are run internally. This is particularly true for the first three, the commercial levers. Supplier may not necessarily find it nice to talk about price evaluation. But the other four levers, product optimization, process, relationship, cross-commodity, that's where you can easily run a workshop with a supplier and invite them and exactly discuss one by one the ideas here. A lot of things come out of this as well. Material replacement. I'm a little bit empirically disappointed why this only came on a second class in our sample, but may have to do with the sample. Obviously, if you can change your material, that is where you have a lot of material, a lot of leverage. The whole idea here is to systematically look for this. One of the sample companies where we made a test workshop built up a database of materials, unsustainable, sustainable, which are somehow compatible from the functionality, and then systematically go through their products. Where are these materials included? So that is exactly material replacement. Functional specification, that's kind of a concept competition, but then with sustainability criteria out of this. Decarbonization of product. And last not least, down here the 10 R's or 10 R's, reuse, rethink, reduce, repair, etc. These are the circularity levers, which can also help and obviously have a potential to increase the savings. If not, in this logic, you would not do so. Process optimization, how to improve the process. Here again, big luck for us, because it turned out that the Industry 4.0 technologies, they are very often nicely environmentally friendly and efficiency increasing. Think about the sensors which you may use in maintenance. Instead of having a programmed maintenance, which for some parts is too early, for reasons you have to do it like this, replacing this with sensors which really give the indication like when a part has to be replaced, maintained, well, you don't have to buy more parts, you save some of them, and obviously you produce less waste. Another green lever. Optimizing logistics, bringing ores to Athens. Land use, another interesting lever. Your supplier needs less land for its production, it does not need to be sealed, etc. Forecasting, reducing waste with it. A reduction of consumables, MRO parts, clear thing, if you can improve them. Of course, this, and here we are again with the cross-functional thing, this requires often a kind of a re-engineering of the product. There are many more process levers, circularity levers expressively extend the use of the materials, so you don't have to buy them. Automation, looking at pollution and in particular water or waste reduction. That's again something which you can very nicely run with the supplier together. And interesting, the last one here, but not the least, regulations. We are bombed with environmental regulations. The European Union, on average, once per month, produce a new directive on some kind of environmental aspects. Now, while we have to comply them, at the same time, there can also be, at least some of them, systematically used as running workshops on how could you apply them to the benefit of cost savings as well. But obviously it depends a little bit on the nature of the regulation, but that is another potential process lever. Then we come to the optimization of the relationship, right? The underlying logic here is to create incentives and goal congruence, or to create a goal congruence by incentives, so that the ideas which otherwise would have been in the shelf are actually then used and discussed jointly. How are you doing this? Well, in the classical idea with the relationship, you would do a partnering, meaning you have an agreed upon price and a margin. And if someone of the partners finds a better cost-saving idea, you share the savings according to a predefined key. This gives the incentives to really open up and identify jointly further improvement ideas. And that is exactly the same thing which you can apply for the green part, right? In the same way. KPIs, targets for the suppliers, collaboration between suppliers. This is another interesting lever, asking one supplier to collaborate with another. So you are the tier 1 or maybe even tier 2 with this. Including contracts, sustainability workshops, technology week. This is extending the idea which we do with Innovation Week, in which suppliers are invited to present or give them the chance to present innovative ideas to us as a buyer. But just make this as a target, just present sustainability ideas, right? This is, it works perfect. Many people which we have been talking with have been applying this. Collaboration with third parties. Think about universities like ours who can help with this as well. Reverse marketing. That is an interesting point here. Reverse marketing means we have seen that being a preferred customer is very important, not only for getting good prices, but also for achieving innovations together with the supplier. Now, part of that is positioning your company as a very environmental friendly company with the suppliers, right? That is exactly the thing. You become a more attractive customer, and at the same time, by doing so, you will in the end benefit also from better prices offered by the suppliers who want to work with you, right? Take this chance here. In the end, development of ecological suppliers. If the supplier are unable to do, supply development is a name of the game here. And finally, collaboration with other commodities. This is exactly the application of this cross-commodity lever with a green perspective. Now, these are the 7 sourcing levers applied to the green part, the green levers. In the end, we'll just share with you 2 paces of experience. We have tested the green lever workshop. Two companies, one as an automotive supplier, tier 2 supplier. Plastic parts was the commodity here. They produce window lifters, so a small part in the car. And indeed, 19 ideas emerged out of this. For example, the one which I already mentioned, where they systematically have learned that one material, they identified about 30 applications in their total set here of products where this material is included. One remark here, you see the participants, 1 plus 12. In that case, 12 participants normally we would argue is a little bit too much for running a lever workshop. In that case, they invited also people from other commodities to have a training session for that. So that's a good idea to invite an expert and train a few more, and at the same time already optimize one commodity group. The other thing here where we have been working is the transport logistics. This was an international pharma company. 6 people participate, so this is the normal size, and 31 ideas emerged out of this. In fact, all of the levers have been applying. 7.5%, something in the range between 7.5% and 28% savings could come out of this. Of course, you will argue nobody can achieve 28% savings. This is true. Some of these levers are contradicting each other. You implement that one, but then you cannot do that one, like the global sourcing thing and the engineering thing or something like this. However, and also we have to take into consideration the costs of implementing them, right? That is taken into account. At the same time, it has been really evidence that you find a lot of ideas and much more than you, at least what I have been thinking. That is why I'm arguing that you may don't even need anymore, at least in the next round, to apply the classical levers and make such a lever workshop. You can directly go through the green lever, start an initiative, go through all of your commodity groups and achieve this. In addition to what we have been doing, we have not written down the environmental effects, but that's obviously what you would do. Also think about the reverse marketing to express this towards your supply base and position yourself as a environmental friendly, as a green company. And one little example which came out of this pharma workshop was that one here, the thermal box. These boxes are needed. Some of the pharmaceuticals, some of the medicine needs to be cooled 5 degrees, and it sticks in such a box with some cool elements. So there's a small medicine in it. Now you can imagine that this is then brought to the hospital or where it is needed. Now you can imagine that this box a priori is not extremely environmentally friendly because it consists of multiple materials. Second, it does not usually return, so there's a waste produced. And third, unfortunately, it's also very expensive. And the idea came here, why do you put one box upon each other in a van and then make your milk run along the hospitals? Why don't you take a smaller van which already has this cooled temperature inside? Then it's just a business case. Is this van cheaper than the multitude of boxes? And it turned out in their particular case, yes, in some areas where they have a high density with customers, it works also with such a van and is both much more environmentally friendly and saves money. It doesn't completely replace this. If it's an isolated location, you continue using these boxes. But in high density things, 5 hospitals in a close range in a megapolis in Sao Paulo, so it works. Now, this is an example, saving money and benefiting the environment. And that is what we invite you to practice, and hope that this little instruction video helped you to run your own green sourcing lever workshops. Thank you and good luck.